Welcome to the bold analysis. The call by American envoy Antony Blinken to President Ruto the day the Gen Z movement were also issuing a statement. That coincidence is politically shaking for Kenya Kwanza administration. I want us to look at this in the political context. Why? The new shape that now the Gen Z are taking is what is going to tilt the scales and challenge the status quo. And there is every reason to appreciate the move by the Gen Z to take up their political, to take up a political structure. Because our Kenyan leadership, our transition in leadership is purely political. Yeah, it's purely political. We are not in a chama. We run on a political basis. Ladies and gentlemen, and I looked at the statements from Antony Blinken and what the Gen Z are saying, and I think the one person that should be worried about this is the opposition wing that has joined the administration. Yesterday, on Thursday, some civil society organizations with victims of those whose children and husbands and kids were killed during the protest were protesting in Nairobi CBD. And as you can see here, they were carrying the caskets and the crosses in protest, or rather in solidarity with those who were killed. And this was happening in CBD. So the police interrogated it, or rather intercepted them, and an altercation ensued. And sometimes I don't understand. Sometimes I don't know what's wrong with government, because what exactly then is a peaceful protest? Because someone carrying a casket and a cross, that person, to my understanding, cannot break into someone's shop. That person can protest peacefully, either go to parliament or whichever office, and then go home. But there is a tendency of police interfering. And immediately after that incident of the arrest of those, and Boniface Mwangi, Khalid, and some other leaders were actually arrested there, there's a statement that was issued. Two statements. One was issued by the leadership of the Gen Z. But we're going to look at those. I don't know whether you remember this video. I've looked at this video keenly. That is Anne Wanjiru. Anne Wanjiru.
More sadness in the country as police continue to be brutal to the people they are supposed to be protecting. From the audio in the video you've just seen, it is evident that this is a mother in pain. The lady goes by the name Anne Wanjiru and is the mother of 21-year-old Evans Kirato, who was killed by a flying tear gas canister during the protest back in June 20th. And we've seen how the police, especially that particular police officer, is mishandling her, not even caring that she is in pain, not even feeling remorse that his fellow officer was the one who threw the tear gas canister that led to the death of her son. And look at how he is handling her. He seems to be strangling her for a minute there. And this just shows how these police officers do not have mercy. Which leads to the question, why do police officers treat people like this? Why do they act as if they are not human, as if they do not have families, as if they would not feel the pain of losing a loved one just like this woman is feeling currently? And what makes them feel like they have the right to treat people in such a manner? Is it because they know that they will not be apprehended by the law?
Hello, Mr. President. Hapa ni makaburi hapa. Na ni kichaka ujue, hii ni kichaka, ni makaburi. Wacha nikuonyeshe. ni makaburi. Ndio hizo. Naziona. Naziona zimepangana. Hizi ni kaburi. So wacha kiburi Mr. President, wacha kiburi. Hata uibe shamba ngapi? Hata unyanyasa watu wangapi? Uwe watu wangapi? Pia wewe ni hapa. Hapa ndio utakuwa mwisho. Hata utengeleza magorofa. Hapa. Hiyo ni kichaka na watu wamejaa huku. Wacha kiburi Mr. President. Wacha kiburi Ruto. Wacha kiburi.
Is the mother to Evans Karito. Remember those who, there was a day I told we were going, I went and visited the mother in Kiambu. Kabarine, if I remember well. That Kabarine. That is the mother of that boy. But I called, and that is why I could not produce any video. When I saw this, when I saw her video, I was really touched. So I made my way to Central Police Station. I was able to see her there, and also met the other family members. She was not charged of anything, but you could feel that. And I remember the day when I visited them, when I took our token of appreciation to them. I remember one of the sisters, the mother was telling me, I can go to the street. If they have killed our son, even us, we can go to the street. So this is coming despite of a commitment that was made by President Ruto to bring an end to such arrests and also release innocent protesters.
Unfortunately, there has been many instances of excessive, unlawful, dangerous, and harmful conduct during the demonstrations and engagements, as a consequence of which many persons have been arrested and charged in courts with various offenses. I urge the criminal justice agencies to take effective measures and ensure that people who may have been innocently caught up on the wrong side of things, and those not implicated in crimes, be released and charges against them withdrawn. This will enable the agencies to focus their resources, efforts, and time in investigating and prosecuting serious criminal elements who took advantage of peaceful demonstrations to advance a dangerous agenda of lawlessness, anarchy, and mayhem. It is important that these suspects are brought to book and that they are prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
So there is one thing that is pending, and this is what most of us, most of Kenyans have a bone of contention with the opposition joining government. The question of social justice is very important. And I remember when Badi was issuing a statement and Orengo was saying, let's push for social justice first before even we join it. By then there is no problem. Opposition joining cabinet, there's no problem. The only issue here is dropping the social justice. While people have been killed and innocent blood is being shed in the altar of people seeking for justice. Then you, out of the moon, you just cross off and say, okay, fine. Then you keep quiet and don't talk about it. That is where the problem, that is why most people in this country, if you read the mood of the nation, that is the problem. But Anthony Blinken, the American envoy on foreign affairs, on African affairs, called President Ruto. And he told President Ruto that the youth is part of a democracy. The media and civil society organizations should also not be interfered with because they are part of that democracy, and asking President Ruto to account, to make the police accountable for their deeds, especially for those things that are happening in the street, excesses of human rights. Remember, I told you, America, when America dealing with African countries, they will always have a caveat for human rights. They always have that, so that is part of their culture. As to whether they mean it, but they will issue statements here and there. So Anthony Blinken made a call to the president. and told the president about this. This call happened after some few developments. Here, the president complained to Ford Foundation on funding NGOs, civil society organizations, and even some civil society organizations have been facing harassments from government under the guise that they are the ones that are fueling the protest. And even the Tuesday protest was not covered by media because allegedly media was suppressed out of the protest, not even to cover. So when the Anthony Blinken was actually making the call to the President Ruto, that call was very critical to explain to the fact that what the government has been doing in handling this is not in order. And it happened after Kinaboni were arrested. But I also paid attention to this press briefing. There's a press briefing that was done by some civil society. I can see my friend Nerima Wako, the daughter to Amos Wako, I think, been said that. And no, he's not. I don't think he's the biological daughter, but there is always that thinking. The wife to Boniface Mwangi and Kasmuel Makoure, who are issuing a statement, and I think I was so touched that the Gen Z have decided to get a shape.
We as the Gen Z movement have the following demands. With the above in mind, we hereby make these following demands. 1. That the office of the president immediately issues a status report to Kenyans on the state of investigations of the 60 killings of our comrades in the recent protests. 2. That the office of the president immediately confirms and shares with the public the official number, names, and details of comrades killed in the recent protests. 3. That the office of the president immediately directs all relevant institutions, including but not limited to IPOA, IAU, DCI, and ODPP, to collect evidence in the next 7 days of police excesses shared by Kenyans, particularly the Gen Zs on social media. Comrade Power. That the office of the president immediately calls for the suspension of all officers highlighted in the social media using excessive force pending finalization of investigations. Comrade Power. That once investigations are complete, the office of the president immediately causes the arrest and charging in court of all rogue police officers for the murder and assault of protesters and journalists. Comrades, power. 6. That the office of the president further calls for the resignation of officers in command, including OCSs of areas where killings were reported. Comrades, power. Last but not least, our 7th demand is that the office of the president immediately issues stern warnings against any officer who will be found using excessive force in dealing with peaceful protesters. Comrades, power.
And leadership so that they can speak in a structured space. Listen to this presser. Now, this is critically important. And I think I appreciate the signal that the Gen Z are taking to provide a leadership to the movement. Even as we speak, I realized like yesterday, the civil society organizations were on the lead. They've taken a bit of it. And let me tell you, civil society organizations are remote controlled. They don't have the independence. They work at the behest of the financiers. So if Gen Zs are supposed to be just led by civil society organizations, then that means their political participation may be limited to many other factors. Now, William Ruto has, with a stroke of a pen, crushed Azimio la Umoja. Raila Odinga and Martha Karua are out of the Azimio. So Azimio has remained with Kalonzo, Jeremiah Kioni, and Eugene Wamalwa. I understand Jeremiah Kioni was supposed even to be made Attorney General, but I don't know what happened. And no, not Attorney General. Kalonzo was to be made Attorney General, then Jeremiah Kioni given a cabinet slot, but they all declined. So you can see an attempt by Kenya Kwanza administration to crush opposition. Believe me, leave alone this charade of letters ODM is writing left, right, and center. ODM is going to be leaning to government in parliament. And even if they are not politically leaning, but ideologically they will be leaning, like what's happening in South Africa between ANC and DA. So, by a stroke of a pen, under the guise of national unity, the government of national unity, William Ruto is suppressing any element of opposition within government. Because one thing he understood is that the Gen Z movement had elevated the accountability questions and accountability concerns that members of the public are raising on government. So with that, I take good cognizance of the fact that Gen Z are now structuring to challenge the status quo. And I concur with those who are saying that the opposition can only be in the street. Opposition cannot be in parliament. Because the way government runs on majoritarian rule. That so long as I have the majority in parliament, I'll have my way with it. The next thing, I'll buy some 2-3 opposition MPs and then pass my bills. So even if a finance bill to be stopped, 2024 finance bill to be stopped, it had to take street protest. It did not take parliament. As we tried it last year in parliament, they didn't get. Even this time round, parliament passed it. But what happened? The accountability, the real opposition on government will take shape in the streets. It's the members of the public. It's the Article 37. The only opposition remaining for government is Article 37. And don't even think of government without opposition. And I want to say, their decision to take up that space is critically important. Number one, with a structured organization, movement and leadership, they can easily litigate against police brutality and fight for the fallen comrades. In fact, they'll be able to track and trace. Because from what has happened, leave alone what the president is saying in State House and in all manner of press briefings and these rallies, from now to 2027, William Ruto is going to camouflage to be very authoritarian and will not want any sort of criticism or any sort of opposition. So maybe to minimize the making of a dictatorship, that Gen Z movement must be there. If they issue a statement, one thing is the government will listen. The government will be shaken. When that Gen Z issues a statement on one factor, the government will listen. And so that's why I take cognizance of the fact that when they decide to take leadership, it doesn't remember who is there. But because of that, it's going to give them some leverage. Number two, the young parliamentarians, the Babu Owino camp, are already leaning towards Gen Z. So that street movement, if it integrates with a political wing, the political blessing is very important. Because with that, the likes of Babu Owino, the likes of Sifuna, they don't have, they cannot thrive in that mongrel of arrangement between Raila and Ruto. They cannot thrive there. Babu Owino cannot thrive there. Babu Owino can only thrive with the Gen Zs. And that's why even, I think he issued a statement yesterday.
The Gen Zs and millennials and Kenyans of goodwill, some young in body and some young at heart, together, stood together to say no to an oppressive tax regime. They also spoke unequivocally that they want a reformed government. Young people in Kenya are concerned about, one, poor agriculture production, which threatens our food adequacy, safety, and security. Two, parents, teachers, and learners alike are all confused by the CBC syllabus and transition. college and university education has been made too expensive, and young Kenyans are not joining while others are dropping from colleges. 3. Our healthcare is now completely broken, with NHIF looted and left incapable of meeting claims by hospitals, some of which have now been forced to close down. Our infrastructure is crumbling, roads are not maintained, our ports are being auctioned, and basic access to water and electricity is out of reach to many Kenyans. The business environment has been destroyed by bad government policy in sector after sector. Foreign direct investment has gone down, and we have seen investors running away to neighboring countries, leaving Kenyans jobless. The unemployment rate has skyrocketed, the cost of living has gone beyond the roof, and many Kenyans cannot afford a decent living. To make matters worse, a burdensome tax regime is squeezing every blood out of Kenyans, killing their businesses and making their products less competitive. Sensing individual and collective failure, the young people came out to demand that their president confront these challenges. Instead, what did the president do? Number one, he used goons and criminals to infiltrate peaceful demonstrations to get reasons to unleash violence against Kenyans. He used the police to unleash terror on young people. Resorted to abductions, forced disappearance, torture, killings, and mutilation of bodies of the Kenyan children. The president hoodwinked us by withdrawing the finance bill, but continued to implement its draconian provisions. He deceitfully dissolved his cabinet on grounds of incompetence, only to reappoint the same crooks. He completely refused to listen to the issues raised by Kenyans, and instead he raided the opposition to appoint cabinet secretaries in a bid to weaken oversight against his government and to gain cosmetic stability, to consider the next general election and to ignore this and the next generation. No Gen Zs were nominated in this cabinet, no gender rule considered, thereby discriminating on women. Persons with disabilities were not considered. The only disabilities which were considered were mental disabilities.
That is what I was discussing, and that is what I'm saying is, it is great in order to integrate with the politicians, the leadership. With that, they also find a voice inside parliament. There are those who, MPs who will go there and they represent those Gen Zs there. It's a very critical constituency that you have to have around you. Number 3, the level of youth participation is high, and we have coming by-elections that can be a platform to shake government. In fact, I listened to one lady, I think she was speaking in Citizen TV, was saying that they need to encourage people to go and register as voters. They need to encourage people to participate in voting. They need to encourage people now to go to the counties, to have grassroots mobilization forums, sensitization forums, and awareness. Now, that is critically important, because one of the things that have affected this country is the fact that political elites have been given monopoly of political mobilization. And in fact, they have that monopoly and they thrive in the financial muscles. Because people in my village, in my small village, will not want to hear what you're saying. They just want to hear, they want to see the size of your pocket. And after seeing the size of your pocket, they just sing your name and chant without asking you questions. So to challenge that status quo of the political elites using the corrupted money to go and pour in the streets and the villages into the rural folks, and the rural folks suspends the common sense and the common understanding, then the Gen Z must start as early as now to mobilize, to create awareness, and with that they will be able to challenge the status quo. Because one thing we all agree is we must challenge the status quo. Lastly, Kenya Kwanza capitalized on the formless shape of the Gen Z to portray the narrative that the movement is just a movement of anarchists. So let's see. If you have a leader, will they arrest that leader? And if they bribe that leader, the public, the good thing is the public is very vigilant. So if you betray the public will, someone will always speak up. Ladies and gentlemen, that is my take. Let's meet in the next.